think it's called COVID. Corona! It's the Coronacast with Daliso Chaponda.
Hello and welcome to the Coronacast with Daliso Chaponda, episode 1. What is the Coronacast? Well, I'm a stand-up comedian. I no longer have an audience because people are self-isolating. Pubs, comedy clubs, theaters are all closing up their shows. So currently, at this very moment, 8:30, I would be on a stage every day. I perform almost every day. I have decided to replace the time when I would perform on stage with a little Coronacast, where I will discuss, make jokes about things related to the coronavirus epidemic. This may change. This is all very new to me, and I will gradually figure this out. So there may be some growing pains, episode 1, episode 2, probably by episode 3 or 4, I'll figure it out. But hopefully some of you will stay through the growing pains. And if you don't enjoy this, leave. Watch my other videos, well-produced stand-up comedy. This is all an experiment. So let us begin. Coronacast, episode 1. Subject, fear. I am afraid. I am currently afraid. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. A lot of people I know, not afraid. In fact, they keep telling me they're not afraid so many times that I think maybe they're fooling themselves. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Now, what are we afraid of? I'll tell you the interesting thing. I think there are 3 things that this epidemic and the world's reaction to it is creating. So the first fear is the fear of the disease itself. Now, I didn't know that I had a hypochondriac in me, but ever since I've known what the potential signs that you could have coronavirus are, I've been, every time I clear my throat, if I'm like, I'm like, oh, is that a cold? Is that a cough? Have I got it? Anytime I feel any body pain, I think, oh no, is that the body pains of the coronavirus? And then the one sign they should not have told us exists is actually fatigue, tiredness. Because there's so many times in the day you feel tired. Now every time I yawn, I'm like, is that just a regular yawn? Or is that Corona? Corona come to get me. I don't know. Well, anyway, so there's a fear of the disease. This is a fear which is more pronounced if you know somebody with pre-existing conditions. If you know somebody older, you're afraid it's going to take your family away from you. You're afraid of being sick. It's just the physical, practical fear of the disease itself. But I don't even think that is the biggest fear that most people are facing right now. There is also, the second one, is the fear of our way of life, of our livelihood. For example, I'm a stand-up comedian. I need a crowd. For me to earn money, I need to be able to go to public gatherings and entertain people. When they're not there, I start to worry. What will I do now? And that is a huge fear. Also, if you provide for anyone, like there's a whole other level of stress you get. Like I've got somebody, it's a very long story. I've got somebody in South Africa who I support financially. I support this person, and now I'm thinking to myself, will I still be able to support them in a month or two? Because I've got savings for me. And then you actually start to test your love. You start to test your affection for people, because you're like, if things go down, when will I cut these people loose? I'm entertaining myself. I hope you are laughing along. If anything, this is very good for my soul. So either way, so the first fear is the physical thing itself. The second thing is the fear of what it will do to your life. And then the third one is the fear of the people in charge, right? Because I've seen all over social media, there's a lot of people debating the actions of those who are in charge of governments and of medical people who are questioning if what they're doing is the best thing. Do we have faith in what they're doing? People are questioning a lot of the choices being made. And then there's also people who start worrying because they're bringing in all these draconian measures. Like in the UK, policemen are going to be able to quarantine people who seem like they have it. There's a bunch of things which are being discussed which feel like the first chapter of The Handmaid's Tale. And so there are people who worry that those in power will use this as an excuse to create all sorts of tyrannical things. Now, I'm not on this third one. I've read a lot of science fiction, and this doesn't necessarily feel like the end of the world. There are no zombies yet. This could change. What other things do we know from science fiction? Also, I would probably have a bow and arrow. I don't have a bow and arrow, so the end of days is not here, because I would be the hero of this. All I have is a Matryoshka doll. I'm rambling! We've talked about the three things. Now, my friends, let us do the second section of my Coronacast. This is such a shambles, but it'll get better. Before I do my jokes, I thought that it would probably be useful to look at famous quotes which people in the past have said about fear to help you deal with the fear. So quote number 1, always do what you're afraid to do, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. A lot of people say this sort of thing. Do one thing that scares you every day. Challenge yourself. Do something frightening. I've never been that sort of person. I think I'm ruled by my fears. I don't take many risks. I take risks on stage, but in life I don't take many risks. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. A lot of people think, oh, be courageous, be crazy, but those courageous people are not the pillars of society. They're the nutters. And then we have to go clean their messes. So that's the first one. I don't necessarily agree with the first favorite rule. Always do what you're afraid of. Imagine you are afraid of being caught by the police if you break in to someone's building. Should you break into someone's building? There's no morality in always do what you're afraid to do. Imagine you're afraid of taking heroin. Should you do it? So Ralph Waldo Emerson, it's a no from me. Quote number 2. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Fear is the path to the dark side. Here, of course, we're discussing Yoda, the very wise Yoda. Do I agree with Yoda? Do I agree with Yoda that fear is the path to the dark side? Let's look at it through. Fear leads to anger. Does my fear lead to anger? No, I'm very scared right now, but I'm not angry. Not angry. Maybe eventually I'll be angry, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yoda. That's not my progression. My progression probably goes, fear leads to terror. Terror leads to weeping. Weeping is the path to the dark side. But fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Again, I don't think I'm hating anyone right now. I think right now I am really scared, and fear leads to hope. And that I'm hoping that this will end and life will resume as normal. Number 3. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. That's Niccolo Machiavelli. Oh my lord. He used to advise princes. He was clearly an amazing politician, but you would not want to be in a relationship with this man. Fear is better than love. I'd rather have my girlfriend terrified of me than love me. I know he meant it in a very specific context, but I think unless you are a CEO, you don't need to be worrying about that. So 1, 2, and 3, none of them apply to me. I'm currently looking for a useful quote about fear from the wisdom of the past, and I think I found it at number 4. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Now that is from H.P. Lovecraft. And I think this man who wrote terrifying books, I think he hit upon it. I think he definitely hit upon it. I think we fear that which we do not know. We fear, it's that little kid fearing the dark. It's fearing what will happen if you turn off the path. And probably the most terrifying thing about this coronavirus is we don't necessarily understand it. Is it going to mutate? Is there going to be a vaccine? Is it going to get worse? We don't know. And it's that unknown that terrifies you. It's that unknown which makes people go raid the supermarkets and grab 50 packs of baked beans because they don't know if they're going to eat. Fear. It's unknown. Yeah, yes. Number 4, we found a quote which I feel helps. And then number five is actually, I think, is the answer to what you do with your fear. And this is from Rosa Parks. And her quote is, "I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear." And I think that's true. I think you gotta have a plan. I mean, I said I was terrified. I'm already less terrified just by doing this. I was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with my time? What am I gonna do? How am I gonna cope? How am I gonna survive? And then I started making a list of things I could do alone, right? And I was like, I can do a Coronacast. I can write a novel. I wrote half a chapter today, and I'm going to write the rest of the chapter tonight. I'm going to write a sitcom. I'm going to call all of my old friends. There's loads of friends I've fallen out of touch with. Probably because, we're all so busy. They're not busy now. I spoke to 2 close old friends. I mean, old friends, old girlfriends. Expect a call. Daliso is coming. Daliso is coming to reminisce, apologize if I did you wrong, or wait for the apology if you did me wrong. So have a plan. I am not wise. This is the wisdom of Rosa Parks. Make a plan. That's a good way to manage your fear. And the final section of the Coronacast is going to be jokes. I've written some jokes. I'm going to just give to you. I've never done them anywhere. They might be horrible. They're comedy routines. So joke number 1. I find it interesting that children are terrified of weird fictional things, right? Kids are afraid of the dark. Kids are afraid of the boogeyman. Kids are afraid of monsters. All of these things which don't exist terrify kids. But when they're in legitimately terrifying situations, like on a plane with turbulence. I remember when I was a little kid, when I was in a plane and there was turbulence going on, I would be having a ball of a time. I would be laughing and giggling. It was a party. Now I'm older. I'm terrified of turbulence, right? And I think there's this weird thing where we always have fear. But when you're a little kid, you're afraid of stuff that doesn't exist. And then you get older and you start being terrified of stuff that really does exist. And I would love to switch. I would love it if when you were a kid, you were terrified of clear and present dangers. You're afraid of, a plane crashing. You're afraid of not being able to pay your rent, losing your job when you were a kid. And then you grew up, and that was only when you started looking around saying, is the boogeyman gonna get me? Are the monsters gonna get me? Okay, I already have seen, even though there's no crowd, this joke does not work, right? The premise, though, is sound. Just so you know, the premise of little kids being afraid of things which are untrue and adults being afraid of stuff which is true is a great premise which a good joke will come out of. I don't know how I switched from trying a joke to analyzing the joke, but this is what happens when you're pointing at yourself and performing. So that was the first one. Failed joke. Joke number 2. Joke number 2. I want to talk about the fact that one of my phobias is dogs. I'm terrified of dogs. I grew up in a society where dogs were scary. I grew up in countries like Kenya and Malawi, where if you saw a dog, it was a guard dog. It was a Rottweiler aiming to rip your throat out Of course I was afraid of dogs. It made sense that I was afraid of dogs. Now I live in a society where people love the dogs. They stroke the dogs. They keep the dogs as pets. And they look at me as a madman because I'm afraid of the dogs. What you've got to realize is it's like if you are afraid of spiders and you move into a society where everybody's stroking the spiders, where everybody's walking around with the spiders, where other things people are scared of, like anthrax. Imagine you move to a society where people are just snorting anthrax like it's cocaine. That's the UK. Dogs are scary. Even poodles. That was the Coronacast episode 1. Please subscribe so that you can get the next episodes. Also in the next few days, I'm going to release a whole comedy special. Essentially, my current tour has been abruptly stopped by the coronavirus, so I can't film it and turn it into a DVD as planned, but I have a medium quality version of it which was just filmed in a comedy club, which I am going to release to all of you to enjoy from your self-isolation in the next few days. Also, in the comments below, tell me what bits you liked. Don't tell me the bits you didn't like, because I do not deal well with criticism, but tell me the bits you like and I'll do more of that and less of the rest. So if you just like the jokes, say I like the jokes. If you like the discussion, say I like the discussion. Don't tell me what you didn't like.